Hey guys, this is Poet Spice and I am here to do a coloring video. I am going to do a picture out of this Beauties by Coco Wyo, and I thought it would be fun to do something different, so I am going to use my Crayola crayons. So let's talk about how I choose a picture first. So one of the few things that I look for is the size of the images or the elements in a picture. So as you can see here, this flower has pretty much a lot of space to color in. I mean, it's a logical thing because crayons do not have super points. Now, I'm pretty sure you could get out, a knife and whittle it down to a pointy point, but it is a crayon and it's a lot of wax, so it's just going to dull and blunt anyway. So that's the first thing. Next thing I look at is the paper. Obviously, you do not have to have fancy paper to work with crayons, but there are some papers where it is better or easier to use them. And so I found that Amazon paper. Oh God, get away, guys! I'm so tired. The Amazon paper, the paper in Able books, those are two I can think of off the top of my head right now. They work really well with just regular old crayons. Sometimes paper, excuse me, sometimes paper with a little more tooth also is helpful, which is like when you get a regular, just a regular kid's coloring book, the paper isn't as smooth. So obviously that'll kind of work. The next thing I do when I'm choosing a picture for crayons is basically, is it going to be interesting? So even though you want larger spaces so that you have enough room to actually get your crayon in there, I don't want it to be so boring that I don't want to color it. So I said this before with like those chibi books and stuff where you got all this big head. You have an 8.5 by 11 page and half of it's filled up with a big face or something. Yeah, I'm not real big on those. So it's the same thing when I go to looking at a picture for crayons. I wanted to have big enough spaces, but I also wanted to have enough interest that it keeps me wanting to color the whole thing. Okay, now as far as colors go, I typically do the same thing I do with anything else. I look at it and figure out what I like, and then I'm going to do at least a 3-color blend. So here you saw that I went from light to a medium, and I will be going to a 3rd and a 4th color to get different shades in here. Alrighty then. As far as process, I don't know if you noticed or paid attention. I do not cover the entire area of an item or whatever I'm coloring with the crayon first. So I typically will go in lighter and leave some space where I want the next color and leave some space where I want the next color. Once I get to a point like here, I'm working on that 3rd color. Might be the 4th color. I lost track. So once I get to that next color where I'm actually kind of like filling in, because you'll notice part of this, if you look on the left hand of the screen, you can still see a lot of white space, which I do not like when I color with crayons. So I just keep going back and forth over them lightly with the colors. I don't even know if I'm explaining this right. Okay, I don't know if it's very evident in the video, but I'm also not pressing very hard. I'm using, you know how they talk about use light pressure with your pencils. It's the same thing with crayons here, because since I'm going to do multiple layers, and crayons will wax quickly. That's what they mostly are. You have to be really light-handed with the crayon. And then once you get your colors in where you want to, then you can go back over them. And once you get your darks in, however you're going to do that, it's like once you get to a point, then you can start going and adding extra pressure. And I usually do that with my darks. So once I've gone to do the first layer of dark, and then I'll go back a little bit over it, then I'll start adding more pressure. Or if I know I want a particular line like heavy, I'll go ahead and put that in with heavy pressure. So like here, I want that longer line on the leaf. I know I want it like dark, so I just went on in with it like and as you can see it getting darker in various places, and some of that white space showing through gets covered. Now, there's typically two things that I do, well, maybe three, to kind of blend. I don't use, what is that stuff called, Gamsaw or anything like that. I usually use my finger and smush it around and get it all yummy. But in this today, I don't know if you could see it, my fingers, like in the wintertime, my fingers are they're just so dry. And so then my fingernails start to crack and everything. And it's just painful. So I tried it a little bit. And so I like use my fingers to smudge the pieces together. And I'll also use like a stylus. So if you have, I tried those paper, I forget. See it there, I'm like rubbing it in and scratching some of it off. Oh gosh, you guys, what are those things called? They have a proper name. But the paper stumps that are like pointed, and you can sharpen it and use it to blend your color pencil. I don't use those. I've tried those and they just do not work for me. So what I actually use are the stylus for when you shape flowers. So they have the round heads. So I use that. I'll use my finger. Sometimes I'll even use like a napkin where you just like put it on your finger and get it to smudge. And I also will use a pen cap. So coming up here pretty soon, you'll see me pull out a marker that has like a plastic cap. And I'll use that to kind of like blend the colors together. The other thing I will do once I get to certain areas, and you saw me do it before on here, is once I've burnished it or rubbed it in or smushed it together, whatever you want to call it, then there'll be areas where I want to like scrape some of it off so that it'll get rid of some of the wax but leave the color. Now, if you see here on this flower, if you look on the left-hand side, you can see where there's still white. On the right-hand side where I'm working now, you can see how it starts to fill that in. Yes. I love my crayons almost as much as I love my markers. Now, I will say, once you get to the point where you have several layers and you can see, I don't know if you can see it really well, but you can see different areas where it kind of looks clumpy. This is where I will begin to start using the other tools or my fingers to kind of smooth it out and to get it to blend and look nice. Also, I will say that once you get to about this point where you have several layers, you will start getting, obviously you see me brushing it away, which I probably shouldn't really do that because it's going to smear sometimes, but I don't really care. You will start getting like the little pieces of crayon that you have to kind of like get rid of. And then there is a bloom. So what, no pun intended, get it? A bloom. So once I start going over this and I start smoothing it out, see, there we go. So see how I'm like moving it and smushing it. Now my fingers were hurting, so I didn't do it very long. And I started to get something else to work with it. But you can see how once you start doing that smoothing, it does go together nicely. And you might be able to see a little bit at the top. It can get like a little bloom behind it. Now I'm pretty sure you can go back behind there with an eraser or something. I just pretty much leave it there unless it's very, very bad, like it's extremely bad. So you can see it there at the top. Because once you go back and do your background or whatever you're going to do with it, it kind of adds another layer, like a reflection of the flower on whatever it is you're looking at. So if you look down here at the bottom where the flower overlaps her hair, you can see some of that reddish color or orangey color onto the hair. But once you go over and color it, it just kind of gives it that extra level of depth. So here on these flowers, I'm going to do the same thing. Now they're smaller, so I try to do the same thing. Go light. Use light pressure. And then do it again with the next color. But you'll notice like the one thing that's different between when I do markers and crayon is I typically don't go over the whole area with the lightest color like I do with marker. Instead, I try to do here's the light color, and there's plenty of space. Then the next color goes underneath it with plenty of space until you get to wherever you're going to stop with your colors. Okay, so does anybody else color with crayon? Does anyone else like crayons? I love them. But I will say this, they have to be Crayola crayons. I do not like using like Rose Art or the Dollar Tree. No, they must be Crayola. There is nothing like Crayola. Crayola crayon, Crayola crayons, Crayola, Crayola. They must be the true thing. Same things with cornflakes. I don't know about you guys, but I have tried so many brands of quote unquote cornflakes, but the only ones that ever taste right are Kellogg's. If they're not Kellogg's cornflakes, I don't want them. Same thing with crayons. If they're not Crayola crayons, I don't want them. I don't want them. All right, now see, here's where I was talking about, like I will take a pen cap. I will take my stylus, especially on smaller pieces, and I will go in whichever direction I need to go in. So if it's circular, or here I'm doing lines. And what it does, it will rub in some of the color, but it will also take off some of the wax. And then so once I do that, then I'll just wipe off the tip and then keep going. And then if I need that color back, then I'll just add some more. So that is an interesting thing about crayons, is like you can put the color down, and then even when you take the quote unquote wax off, there's still that color. It's not necessarily as vibrant, but then you just go back and put more layers on. And so that's what I'm working on here. I'm using circular motions for the most part to just kind of blend in those colors. And vary your size according to whatever size the image is. So if I were doing like a larger space, maybe like that front part of her hair that you could still see, I would probably use a bigger one. And then you see those tiny flowers. Definitely is a small. We would definitely use a small one there. All right, so I'm doing this yellow flower, and it'll be the same process. And I'll start with the light. I guess I could talk to you about balance. So I don't like oddly balanced items. They don't have to be totally equal, but like equal in size. So you'll notice I did a large flower that was in orange, and then I did the smaller flowers, some of them in the orangey color, but I made it so that it is like a triangle of color. So you've got large orange and then pieces of orange throughout. I'll do the same thing with the yellow and go the opposite direction. And I actually like, like the rule of 3s or 5s versus even numbers so much. Now, in this case, I'm doing it a little bit different. I did say that I usually don't go over the whole thing in the lightest color, but this time I did because the yellow is really light, so I could go ahead and do that and not build up so much wax. But with that other color that is definitely darker, it would cause more issues. And so just like I would do with marker, here wherever things are overlapping is going to be darker. And so I'm doing that and then trying to leave the tips lighter. I just love how it looks when it's finished. It's like, ah. And you wouldn't think that crayons could look that good. And I'm not even a crayon artist. I don't know if you've seen stuff on YouTube where people they're quote unquote real artists and they use crayon. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you get that person to look real with crayons? I'm not to that level yet, people. I'm not to that level yet. Ooh, child. But it still looks nice. I'm still trying to decide what to do for my birthday as far as my channels go. I want to do some kind of giveaway, but I also want to do some kind of challenge. Like I've seen other people do their coloring challenge where they take part of the month and break it down by letter. And so you do blah, 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 this, that. So February, you have FEB, and then I can't remember who does that though. There's a couple people. I have to go back and look at the video. So I thought about doing something like that, but then I'm thinking about doing a my favorite things coloring challenge or a coloring tag. Or I pick my 10 favorite things and then people see if they can find it in coloring books and color them. That's one thing I was thinking about. I don't know. What do you guys think? Mm-hmm. And I already have a prize, so that's good. So here I am going back to the third color. And definitely going into wherever I want the darkest areas to be or where there's shadows the most. I guess I could draw something and then use that as the coloring for my birthday month. I don't know. Or maybe I could bring out my digital images again that I had on my Etsy shop. I don't know. So here I'm going ahead and add another dark color, and then I'm using this pen to go ahead and smooth it out because I didn't like it. It wasn't dark enough. There wasn't enough contrast. So I went ahead and added that extra piece of darkness. And now I'm just going to quickly fill in some of these smaller flowers because since they're so small, you don't need as much detail because it's already going to take care of itself. I am going to go with some extra shading because I always do, but it isn't necessarily needing 5 different layers, although I think I just did 3. I don't know how to stop. And then since I needed a skinnier tip, I just turned the crayon over because for a while you'll have that little ridge from the bottom, the round part, and so I'll just use that edge to get into smaller places as well. So I'm just going to do the same thing, finishing up some of these little flowers and then using the stylus to spread the color around. And then you could see, once I get that shiny, so you can see that shininess on it, then I know I'm pretty much done with that area. All right, thanks for watching, and definitely come back for another episode. Don't forget to leave some comments. Be safe.